privileged and honoured to welcome John Kamara, who's joining us for this launch edition. Welcome, John. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is John Kamara, and I'm happy to be the first guest on AI TV.
Brilliant. Essentially, what we're going to be doing, and we're probably going to make some mistakes as we go. We're broadcasting live here from Cape Town. But what we're trying to do is tell a little bit about the AI story in Africa. There's a lot going on right now in the industry. There's a lot happening with investment. There's a lot happening with startups. Big businesses are now looking at adopting AI technologies in our region. And basically, what we're going to do today is just really have a conversation about some of the things that we've picked up, you and I, as we've been looking at this year, John. I think we'll start off with, basically what's your take on AI in Africa and what's happening across the landscape right now?
We've been around a bit this past year already. Looking at the AI ecosystem and the landscape. One of the important things that we realize is that Africa is ripe for AI because the fact that we have to collect so much data in so many verticals across the continent to actually improve services and to improve quality of life, and even around the fact that we use the mobile phone so much, which basically means we're consistently collecting, accessing data at very micro level. So we're collecting huge amounts of data. And for us to be able to hone in on effective, efficient services, we definitely need to now start thinking about how AI plays an important role in how we collect, access, and use data for everyday life. So, going across from East to West Africa, you're now beginning to see pop-ups of different, data science networks, AI communities. Even companies are beginning to think about traditional companies who never have thought about AI before are thinking, what is this AI stuff? So at least the conversation has become part of everyday life, so which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just last week, the South African government launched the Fourth Industrial Revolution Summit, and they had business there, leaders there, academic institutions there. You've recently become aware of a new development. Was it at Nelson Mandela Institute?
Yeah, so just staying with you for a minute, right? Fourth Industrial Revolution is a big word that everybody's talking about at the minute, right? And for not just South Africa, even down East and West Africa. And one of the big things that we tend to forget when we talk about all this revolution is what is the effect on the real microeconomy. And that's why I think, again, AI plays a very, very important role in how we explain this microeconomy effect in industrial revolution to this decision and policymakers that, you can't have this big word and forget here and all this data that is moving back and forth here. So the Nelson Mandela Institute, which kind of, is an institute of excellence, center of excellence in Africa, in Arusha, they've kind of taken a proactive leap to say, how do we begin to use AI to provide solutions to some of the local problems we have in Tanzania and East Africa? It's a science institute. It's a center of excellence. It's one of the 6 in Africa. I think it's 4 or 6. So, But they're now taking a proactive look at artificial intelligence, machine learning. What can we do in the sciences so that the sciences doesn't live in a silo? How do we bring technology into science, and how do we use artificial intelligence to be able to start looking at product solutions that we actually provide? And because they collect a lot of data, machine learning is actually a huge part of what they are looking into in terms of, deep learning of, sciences, and how that machine learning allows them to provide solutions in health, agriculture, life sciences, food science, and I think it's also environment, which is a key area that they're interested in.
Now, you and I spent a week at the AI for Good Summit in Geneva about 8 weeks ago. And it was amazing to see the interest in how AI can be used to look at data, for example, for social good, economic good applications, and also some of the newer things happening with like robotics, etc. What were some of the takeaways from you from that event? Because I know there was quite an interest in the Northern Hemisphere getting more interested in AI in Africa, and that we had quite a few people come to our stand and ask us at the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa, how can we get involved in projects in Africa? What was your takeaway from the event?
My takeaway was on 2 sides. One was, remember we're on the panel where we're discussing, big data driven intelligence in Africa, was the fact that the Northern Hemisphere Traditionally, we know about it's NGOs and big government corps and big organizations have always done these social impact projects that are very intervention based. Get done, finish, and there is no consistency. And what we were discussing was how does AI and data play an important role in consistency in after you finish the project and gone, that it stays alive. And that was a big area of, because it's across multiple verticals. It's irrelevant what the vertical is like, that consistency of approach and understanding that data is an important part. And also the second part was the fact that a lot of the people who are developing products in Africa are young people. And they're developing products based on a specific need. They want to get out of poverty. They want to make money. They want to do X. So they're not necessarily thinking about AI for good, but they have access to so much data. So if we don't understand, which is what we said in that panel, the problems and the reasons why they're doing this, and begin to, tap into that cause and effect from day one, so that we start teaching them how to actually make sure that AI for good becomes an important part of what they're developing. These kids will just, have so much access to data that anybody who taps into that data, it could be economic disasters in some countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that struck me was that there definitely was a hunger for some of these initiatives in Africa, and I say in quotes, because I think a lot of it is well-meaning and well-intentioned, that actually the follow-up and the follow-through and the measurement and delivery was something now which I was hearing organizations are interested in, and also the role of philanthropy. So philanthropic organizations that actually can help provide data or open doors to government to get data to make some of these projects work definitely seemed to be a takeaway I had from the event.
No, I mean, ITU itself, they're trying to, the idea was to try to, I think this was the first time Africa was really represented properly with MIA.
Yeah, I think it was.
Because we didn't really see much. I mean, they're doing AI for good. It's on my Africa, and there's probably just me and you, the people
exactly.
who are representing the whole continent.
Yeah.
So I think definitely there has to be more inclusion.
Yeah,
and inclusion then means even the philanthropic acts then means that they are going down to the baseline to understand the sustainability of this project. It's all well-meaning. We know that. I mean, the money spent, the time, the effort, the energy. I mean, we met a few guys the Dutch guys that we met who were doing some projects, and they were building apps for Africa based on AI, and they went to Kenya and they found some kids who had built something way better.
Yeah, so, it was interesting that the Northern Hemisphere pioneers were actually finding that they built a app, and when they got to Africa to implement it, they found that the locals had built a better app for the same application. And I think that's where I'm quite passionate about having this. This is why one of the reasons why we launched AI TV was to have this African narrative join this Northern Hemisphere narrative, which is kind of a East-West, kind of European, America, China kind of discussion. And Africa tends to be something that's left out. And so what we're trying to do is push up and get people involved in this debate. I think one of the areas of expertise that you've got, John, is your knowledge of all the incubators around Africa, certainly in the North, East and West Africa region. What's going on in those incubators? What's happening? What are you hearing from those places?
One of the important things that we find in the incubators around technology is buzzwords and focus on specific buzz technology that are driving instant change. So blockchain, AI, IoT, but without real implementation or practical implementation in businesses that they actually building, So you want to build a project and you just want to build it on blockchain, but there's really no need for you to build it on blockchain. But the thing with AI is practically every business, has a need for AI at some point.
Well, they will do, right?
Or will do.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is one of the work that I'm doing is trying to help re-engineer and provide education through various associations, including me as well, to a lot of these young kids and developers and startups in all these incubators around rethinking how they actually position their business and make it AI-driven businesses, because it's, a lot of them are very consumer-focused products, consumer-focused solutions. So can we start looking at how AI can help And then can we start also training them on AI for good? And can you take that out into the research institutes, into the universities where these guys come from, and start actually teaching them an AI, how they can apply data sciences, how they can apply, machine learning to their thought process before they even start thinking about the business. So I think a huge part of it is the education part, which is what we're trying to see in terms of re-engineering the mind of these young kids.
Yeah, I know the guys at Data Science Nigeria, I think they've set their ambition to train 1 million young people in the next 10 years in machine learning and data science, which is an amazing initiative. I think I was at the Startup Bootcamp Africa session this morning here in Cape Town, where I was a mentor. And it was interesting to listen to some of the startups there. They're developing platforms which are essentially aggregating data for the purpose that they are developing it for. But what they're realizing or not realizing is that data has a huge value, which they're not actually leveraging. So they're pulling in this data for their app, but they're not actually leveraging that data or understand the real value of that data, maybe to a third party who would be willing to pay for it, or for it to feed into another algorithm for some other platform. So yeah, they say data is the new oil, and I think that's definitely the case in Africa.
It is. I was talking to a young startup owner today. They built a product, Farmer Green, in Tanzania. And I was telling them how, they can look at pivoting their business model and make it more AI focused and look at partnership as a module. And they can actually revolutionize how, people look at, agricultural funding, micro level funding for agri products in Tanzania, and how they pull in a lot of partners who already have existing data, and how they help those farmers actually use that data to create values, but at the top of it, create a value chain for social enterprises. And they could just be right in the middle. All they're just doing is using AI-led intelligence to do this a little bit better. And those are the kind of things that I think is important that we have to actively do for a lot of these young businesses, just like you were this morning, because they're just thinking, we're building, we're taking product, they're not even talking to each other, we're collecting all these data, we're just kind of tunnel vision approach of what we want to do. Even when they use AI, it's very subtle, but can we re-engineer their mindset? That's what really interests me.
And just to wrap it up, John, I think you started touching on investment there, and I was at a startup investment incubator program this morning. What's the investment scene like for AI in Africa? I certainly have an opinion on it. What are you seeing? You spend most of your time in airports and hotels and taxis in places like Nairobi and Lagos and Accra, places that many people don't get the opportunity to travel to. But what's the investment scene? If you're a young entrepreneur and looking for an investment, what would be the advice you give?
Well, nobody's investing in my taxi fares, so
yeah.
I think the first thing is that we're seeing a lot more money coming into Africa. Specifically in tech, consumer-focused tech products across, about 5 or 6 verticals that are key markets, which education, agriculture, fintech, health tech, Now we're seeing some media type investment coming, logistics, trade, but, very few companies are actually focused on AI-driven investment using technology. Most investors don't really understand that. And it's hard for them to invest in something they don't understand. And so what most of them look for is just data. Are you collecting data? Are you a platform that collects data? Do you have access to a market? And, can we see a pattern of growth that allows you to do that? So, and the second thing that I also then see is that it's also hard for young entrepreneurs to get invested here, because traditional investors, the traditional investment models here, it's not really working very well for us.
What's not working, for example?
For example, first of all, they're asking a lot of these kids, provide these financial models for projection for a startup for 4 years, or 5 years or 3 years. And you find that, these guys, anybody can engineer a financial model, but smarter investors are looking at, do you have a business that can grow? Do you have a revenue model that makes sense? And do you have a market approach? And the people, I don't need to see your financials. Actually, keep it away from me, because it's actually a negative approach to. Nick, if you ask me to create a financial model for you for a business, I can create one that will suit your need, and I can defend it.
You're telling me what I want to hear, essentially.
Literally tell you what you want to hear, and a lot of these young kids are struggling with, trying to convince those investors that, so because most investors are so traditional.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as we wrap up this interview, I mean, I think, my observation is that the traditional VC as we know it needs to change as well. There are so many new technologies coming just within the AI vertical. And when I talk to people in the platform companies, they themselves are struggling to keep up with what's going on in just one company. And they're the people making the tech. So I think it's an interesting time right now for investors to retool their understanding about just what is going on out there. Because I think if you're going to have a diverse portfolio, if you want to include AI in that, then you have to understand what you're investing in. And it's much easier to fall back on more traditional investments if you say, well, I don't understand this. So I think that's going to be a big thing that we're going to see more of. So, John, I just want to say thanks very much for coming. We try and keep these things to about 10, 15 minutes so we keep our listeners happy. Basically, what we're going to do next on episode 2, we're going to interview Dr. Jacques Ludic, someone you know very well, and a pioneer in starting AI companies here in Africa. And you'll be joining us at AI Expo in September here in Cape Town.
No, I'm definitely looking forward to AI Expo. I think it's a brilliant opportunity for the African continent to project, the best of the best. So AI Expo, I'm looking forward to the next exhibition to listen to Dr. Jack, some of the things he's going to talk to. And, we keep promoting AI TV. Guys, it's great that we have a launch pad to help promote AI in Africa and show the rest of the world that actually something is happening.
Thanks for joining us, John, on this first edition. And thanks for joining us. And we'll sign off now, but join us in episode 2 where we talk to Dr. Jacques Ludic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.